So I want to start with a question that comes from Jennifer, and she says, how do you marry the creative side and the logistics side of your communications? So I have to say, Jennifer, that I would look at it this way. You've got to set up some systems that are going to help you with the logistics side of your communications so that you can focus on the creative. And I say that as a creative who absolutely hates logistics, that the only way I found that I was able to survive without absolutely going crazy was to put some of these things into place. And I start by looking at every communication as having three parts. And those three parts are planning, production, and promotion. Okay, now during the planning stage, this is all about logistics. Okay, you're just getting your information all hashed out, figured out exactly what it is you're going to do, how it's all going to be put together. And if you can put some systems into place to help you, and here's what I mean. I would start with having some sort of way to digitally collect your information. A form online that you can send to people. There's services, there's a company called Wufoo, WUFOO, Wufoo. And Google Docs has a service like this where you can create an online form and then you can send the link to people when they request a project and say, hey, can you fill this out for me? It would help me tremendously to know the details. And it also then helps the person who's making the request to have thought through everything prior to making the submission. There's nothing like sitting in a meeting with someone and them saying, oh, right, that event, but I don't know when it is, I don't know who the contact is, and all of a sudden you're spending tons of time chasing down information that really you could have gathered in one fell swoop. So if you could use a form collector like that, it's something then I actually made it available to staff, created a link on the website, and just didn't make it visible to people outside of our organization so they could go to the church address / project request or something like that. And then they could submit their information. Or if someone stopped by or caught me on a Sunday and said, hey, there's something coming, I need to get you info, I could just email them a link to this form and then they could fill it out, and I didn't spend time then hashing through lots of information or having challenges gathering everything. So I'd start with doing that, and then I'd find a way to manage your projects. There's several ways you can do this. I actually found that the most productive way for me to do it, while it took time and was frustrating, but it worked, was actually go completely old school. And I used a whiteboard, and I got black graphic tape and lined out a grid on it. And I actually kept a list of all the active projects, what I was working on, where I was at in the process, how we were working through those, what stage we were at. Was it improving? Was it, had it been sent to print already? What exactly had happened? Hey, Adam, good to see you. Thanks for joining in. And it was totally old school, but the reason it worked for me was there was a natural tendency in our church for people to come in my office and say, I have a project and I need it tomorrow. And I could turn around and I could look at that whiteboard. Now, this board behind me doesn't have that information on it, but I could point to the board and say, look at this list and all the projects I'm working on, where I'm at in the process, and you just need to understand that I'll do my best to help you, but there are a lot of things on my plate and other people that I'm helping create stuff for also. You're not the only one here. So while it was an old school project management, it did work. I did find that there was times I needed to transition to something that was more digital. So there's project to-do lists out there. The App Store has tons of them, ones that I could have a copy on my phone and I could have a copy on my desktop, and then I could actually manage things. Either way, if I got an email that said, hey, it's been signed off, I could mark it in the project to-do list. That way I knew when I sat at my computer the next time, I didn't have to go looking for that email. It had truly been signed off. I used Things. It's called Things. That's on the Mac and iOS. Or you could actually go with something, if you've got a few people on your team, something more like Asana, which is a project management software, allow you to manage people and tasks per person. It's definitely a little more robust, and there'd be some costs associated with it. But I would definitely find a way to manage your projects, just to help clean up the process. And that way you also know you aren't dropping anything. There isn't anything falling through the cracks in the process. And then the third piece in the planning stage that I always made sure was I actually would calendar things out, either on a large board so that I could see several months in advance, or just on a digital calendar on my computer desktop so that I could see, okay, this weekend these things are coming, we're going to be promoting them, so I need to go back a certain amount of time and know social media needs to start here. If we're going to do any mailers, they need to start here. When's the registration deadline? We've got to make sure we push coming up to that. So when I could then schedule those things out, because I had everything collected in a form and I had that to-do list, I could keep referring back to those things and go, okay, this needs to be on my calendar. It gave me an overview of just what was coming. So I would always say you're going to spend time in the logistics, but automate as much of this as you can. Find ways to track it for you. Okay. The next stage I mentioned was producing, and the production stage is really the stage that I always enjoyed the most, just because it was sheerly creative, and it gave you a chance to get out of that logistics for a little while and focus on what you really enjoy doing as a communicator and designer, and that's creating things. And I would write copy, create visuals in this stage. I'd proof the project. I'd send it to other people to proof the project. I'd export all the images that were necessary, print the things that were needed, and just make sure we were on top of all those pieces and that they were done. And this is really where the calendar from the planning stage would really come in. Is I'd know, okay, this weekend I only need to have half of this print ready or export ready, but by next week I've got to have the rest ready. So it would help me kind of manage the whole project amongst all the other communications and job responsibilities that I had. I didn't have to spend 8 hours on this project when I realized, oh, next week, I have a little more time to finish some of this up. And so the third stage I mentioned was the promotion stage, and that's really where you just deliver all of the created materials. You put everything together in one fell swoop, and start delivering it based on that calendar and the dates that you're going to deliver things. And here's the thing I would caution you on is I found it was really easy to get programmatic and say, okay, here's the schedule we're going to follow, and we're just going to become a little pharisaical about it and follow the list. And don't be afraid halfway through a promotion if you realize, hey, we're getting weird responses. People keep re-asking the same question over and over. We maybe weren't clear about something. Maybe we need to say it again. We need to say it in a new way. So don't be afraid, based on the responses you're receiving, to tweak things. If you had 2 emails scheduled during a multi-week promotion and you realize we've got to answer some questions, add a third one. Make sure at the end of the day that you're communicating what needs to be communicated. And just because you've got a system doesn't mean the system is there to help you. It doesn't mean you have to always live and die by the system. Okay, so don't get caught up in that. The key is you've got to create a system that you can use over and over again with every project, so you're not reinventing every time you do it. Okay, and build a system around the logistics so you can free yourself to be creative. If you've got a question you'd like to submit for Ask Rad Ideas, visit radideas.com/AskRadIdeas to submit your question.